channel. I hope all of you are doing great. So a lot of us Nokia fans remember this device right here. So this looks like the Nokia N8, but this is the Nokia E7. So this is the Nokia E7. It's been more than a decade. It's the combination of the communicator series and the E series, and this has a much more streamlined design, and the hardware was actually pretty good back in the days. Unfortunately, it was running on Symbian OS, and of course we know the downfall of the Symbian OS, but we are not here today to discuss about the Symbian operating system and whatnot. But the Nokia E7 is unique because it has a full QWERTY keyboard experience underneath its display. Now, even after a decade, you can see how the hinge mechanism works really well, and some of us are still yearning to have this physical keyboard experience on a more modern hardware. Now, there are not many companies out there which are producing this. Now, we do note that the design of the devices these days are pretty much standard other than the foldable devices, but there are a couple of smaller companies out there producing such a device similar to the Nokia E7, and I'm going to share with you today one such device. So do join me in this simple unboxing and initial review of one-of-a-kind device that we have today. So today with me is a very unique device made by the company called Function Tech, which is based in London, UK. Of course, this device is manufactured in China, but you can see along the side of the devices that they've really emphasized that this is actually designed in UK. Now, it is a pretty simple minimalistic kind of a packaging. This is a black matte finishing on the box. I like how the gold outline is on the device itself to highlight the design of the device along with the company logo here. Now, it is written here as Pro 1, but this device is also known as Pro 1X. So do correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm not really sure how many variants of this device is, because this is the final retail version of what initially started as a crowdfunding project 2 years back. So I'm not really sure whether the retail version and the version that goes to the backers are slightly different, because there are differences not just in the name but also in the hardware that came with this device. I will be sharing more on that later. Now, pretty much nothing on the right and the left hand side of the device. On the back, if you were to see, this device only comes in one configuration, which is 8 GB of RAM, 256 GB of storage, blue color, QWERTY keyboard, and the bands that it supports. Of course, this is a 4G LTE device, no 5G here. So I've removed the phone from the packaging because I've been using them. So I'm going to show you the rest of the content of the box. So once you remove in, you would see this is where the box is supposed to be. Once you remove this layer, then you get access to this small compartment to yield this small box which contains the Function Tech. As you can see here, it's written as Function Tech Pro 1X, a quick start guide. So a bit of confusion with the naming convention used. This is a very good quality Usbc charger here, and what's really nice is that they've included adapter with 3 different heads. So these are the heads of the adapter, whichever suits your country. Pretty much they got all the major ones covered here. Okay, so what's nice here is that this is a Qualcomm certified quick charge 3.0 charger which is included, which is really nice. Now, unfortunately, there is no sort of a screen protector on board. We don't get any casing on board for this device, which would have been pretty nice if that's included, because it's going to be really difficult to hunt for one, because the device has a curved display. So it's going to be a difficult one to get a really sort of a good quality screen protector. So with that said, I'm just going to put this box aside, and here is the device itself. So my initial impression of this device on hand is that this really feels good in the hand. It got the right weight distribution. You don't feel that it is overweight on one side. Do take note that this device is actually chunky. So it is chunky, it is just slightly thicker than the Nokia E7, but it packs a more potent hardware. So if you're having them side by side, the Function Tech Pro 1X is just slightly thicker. It's got a right weight to weight. The weight is distributed equally well, so it's really nice in the hand. Now this device, if I'm not mistaken, weighs somewhat around 240 grams. Now the display is a 5.99-inch display. I'm going to talk to you bit by bit of everything regarding this device. Now when it comes to the build quality of it, this feels plasticky. Okay, so this feels plasticky, but it doesn't feel cheap, it just feels nice. But if you come from Nokia devices, for example in the Nokia E7 itself, with a more metallic feel to it, and the recent generations of Nokia devices, this feels more plasticky overall. Now the exact model number is QX1050, so this is something to be taken note of. So I'm not really sure how many variants of these devices are out there. Now the first thing right here that you will take note, I hope you can see that, is the 48 megapixel single sensor over the back with an LED flash. Now unfortunately this is not the same as what is being advertised in their website. In the website it is written as a 12 megapixel Sony sensor camera, but in reality we get a 48 megapixel quad Bayer sensor device with questionable quality. I will be sharing with you later. Now there's a single microphone here. Now over the top you have the loudspeaker. So there's two loudspeakers here, one on top and one at the bottom. Now the loudspeaker is pretty loud. Unfortunately it lacks depth, so if you want to binge watch movies and whatnot, the loudspeaker will do just fine for you. Right, so I'm not going to pick much on the loudspeaker. Having two itself is pretty good. So there's an addition of a 3.5mm head jack here, which is pretty sweet. Now over the bottom you've got another microphone, a USB-C charging port. On the right hand side of the device, you see that it's pretty cramped up here, but there are a couple of interesting things here. Now you've got a volume rocker, you've got a power button, a fingerprint scanner, and a dedicated camera shutter button. Now a couple of things here. The buttons are all solid, so all these buttons are really well built, except for the what is supposed to be the two-stage camera shutter button. Unfortunately the two-stage camera shutter button is slightly more flimsy than the rest of the buttons here. Now when it comes to the fingerprint scanner, I'll share with you this. So I'm just going to activate this device here. Now switch it off. You see the delay in the fingerprint scanner. Now this is not the only issue with the fingerprint scanner. So I've had a couple of experience where the fingerprint scanner fails to recognize the thumb, and the screen actually becomes unresponsive. So this is an intermittent issue. So as you can see, it's already started to creep in. So it works intermittently well, but at times it doesn't work. The fingerprint registration process itself was pretty straightforward, but unfortunately, as you can see, the accuracy of it, the responsiveness of it is somewhat questionable. So again, this is what we're getting here. So out of 10 times, probably half of it might not be recognized. So this is pretty much probably a software related issue. Probably they could speed up the recognition and whatnot. So you can see, even if it registers, it takes a second or two to actually wake up the device. So it's not as fast as you want it to be, and there we go, not recognized. So intermittently the fingerprint scanner has some issue with fingerprint recognition, and it's a bit slow. Now when it comes to the dedicated camera shutter button, this is one of the fastest dedicated camera shutter button that I've seen. Now just to make it a point that this is not exactly a two-stage camera button, because as you can see, the focusing is by the autofocus system by the camera itself and not by the button here. There is no two-stage camera button, it's just a single stage to snap the images. There we go, and that's it. It is not a two-stage camera button. It is advertised as a two-stage camera button, but unfortunately that is not the case here. Now on the front, we've got a fixed focus 8 megapixel camera. The light sensor is here on the side, and also a notification light which is pretty much on this side of the screen. Now this is a 5.99-inch AMOLED display. There's no fast refresh rate. So regarding the auto brightness. I've had some issues with the auto brightness here because it is not responsive and it takes a while for it to recognize the differences in the surrounding lighting. So if I were to, please take note of the current lighting intensity. So if I were to bring it in, and you can see that it responds, but this response is not always there. So again, I hope you can see I've set the brightness to minimum, and if I were to bring it in, it doesn't really work as responsive as it should be. So this is an LED flash. By right, it should be increasing the brightness, but unfortunately that is not the response that we get here. So it does work at times, but again, like I said, this is probably some lag in software optimization. You can see that it works again, and you can see how it is not working again. So all these are software related experiences that should be able to be fixed with the appropriate software. Now, talking about software, this phone runs on Android 11 out of the box. I will be showing you here. It doesn't triple boot into any other operating system like Lineage OS, Ubuntu, or Sailfish for that matter. Android 11, still stuck with Android 11 on June 1, 2022. So it does have 256 GB of storage, which is pretty good. I think out of that much of storage, we have about 220 GB of available storage out there. So we go into the storage side here. You can see 256 GB of storage, 23 GB is being used. Now do take note that the overall experience when it comes to this software is actually pretty good, because this is running a near stock Android experience. So browsing through the apps, launching the apps, you've got no issue at all. Now, apart from a couple of apps that I've installed here, the only other app that this phone came with is the sound recorder and the FM radio. Pretty much the couple of apps I've installed like PUBG, Geekbench and all that is what I've installed. So pretty much very stock Android experience with this device. Now, having said that, let's take a look into the actual hardware of this device. Now, this device is marketed as having Snapdragon 662, but using CPU Z, it indicates that this device is actually running Qualcomm Snapdragon 665. So, as you can see here, the model number is Function Tec Pro 1X, model QX1050. Screen resolution is 1080 by 2160. Total RAM available is 8 GB. Now, this is something that I'm really not sure, because in the I do take note that the initial version, which was actually promoted in Indiegogo, had a more powerful hardware, and somewhere down the line they had to change the hardware a bit, and the final hardware is Snapdragon 665 instead of 662, which actually doesn't really have much of a difference, I would say, but I don't know whether there are other variants of this device with other hardware there. Now, a while ago I was talking about the camera. Now, a lot of issues I've encountered with the camera system. Now, for one, the camera user interface is pretty much basic. So you've got 4 modes here: video, high frame rate, photo, and a pro mode. Unfortunately, there is no night mode, so this is something not acceptable in 2023. Now, like I said, the camera megapixel count is also different. Instead of the 12 megapixel Sony sensor, we got a 48 megapixel of unknown sensor, and the quality is actually very, very mediocre at best. So if you go into the camera setting itself, not much of options available. So you've got options for HDR, probably options to shoot in auto settings. So if you go to the settings further, you have face detection, option to store it in the phone, file format is JPEG or the more newer recent compressed form HEIF. You can shoot the image at 12 megapixel. There is no way to shoot at 48 megapixel resolution, although 12 is usually more superior. I've chosen here a high picture quality and a couple of basic settings there. Now, when it comes to video, in the official website, it shows that this device is supposed to support a 4K 30 frames per second or a 60 frames per second for that matter, but in reality, it is just limited to 1080p recording. So a lot of differences with what is being advertised and what we're actually getting. The video duration, of course, you can limit to a certain designated duration, or you can go to no limit. And I'm not really sure with this option here, video electrical stabilization, you can disable. You got version 2, version 3. Can't really tell what are the difference at this point of time. Got options to reduce the noise quality, option to encode in either 264 or 265 format, and the audio encoder. I would say that despite having so many of what looks like photo or video centric settings and choices, the overall experience of the camera is pretty lackluster. So for example, if I were to take just a random photo, I would say that the quality is not as what you would expect for any device in 2022. That is because the final image is often lacking details and pretty much noisy. So again, this is something that can be improved with the software update. Now do take note that one other way to actually bypass it is using Gcam. So once you install Gcam, the one that I'm using here is the Gcam for Nokia 5.4. You get access to night sight and whatnot, so probably that can salvage the camera experience. When it comes to the Geekbench for the computing power and whatnot, this is what you'll expect from a Snapdragon 6 series. Single core score is 302, multi-core score is 1245. Now, speaking of the camera, before we get into that, let me show you how tedious it is. Now, I forgot to mention that you also have this slot here for you to insert your SIM card and memory card on the left hand side. Now, there is no easy way to expose the keyboard. Now, unlike in the Nokia E7 where all you need to do is just press this gently and you can expose the keyboard underneath, it's pretty difficult to do that here. So if you were to try your best, now the first thing you notice is that the dedicated camera shutter button will come into your place, so you might want to position your hand this way. And the next thing is, if you were to put a pressure, you can see the display elevating further, but once you do this, it is pretty difficult to actually push it gently. So you've got to put a lot of pressure there. Unfortunately, that pressure is going to fall on the display itself. Now over time, this might cause an issue with the display itself. So I would suggest a more safer way is to just gently lift it up, although this is not going to look cool at all. So probably you want to take note on that. Now the good thing is this full row of keyboard is really fantastic to use. You've got a backlit keyboard. The experience is really nice, really fantastic. They've done a great job with the keyboard experience. So you've got a lot of customizable quick buttons here. For example, so you can launch the search just by the press of a button. You can return to home using the dedicated function button. So there's no touchpad or whatnot for that, but the keyboard button experience is really nice, I would say. So let's go to Nokia Power User. Typing experience is really nice. The feedback that it goes, the distance that it travels is really good. It's showing it's not connected to internet. Now this is the other issue that I've come across with this device. Intermittent Wi-Fi gets disconnected, although I've got it saved here. So every now and then the internet gets disconnected. As you can see, here is showing there's no internet. Now it shows that it's connected. So these are a lot of issues with this device at this point of time. Now let's go to Nokia Power User side. So the keyboard experience is really good. So I won't say the keyboard experience is not good. It's really good. So of course the typing experience, everything is pretty much good with the keyboard. Now one of the use scenario for this device is probably for Zoom meeting or probably for a video call, but if you were to just launch the camera app, for example, in this position, once you've launched the keyboard, if you were to click it in, then you will see that this is the issue. So the camera only shows on this part of the screen, pretty much the left and the right hand side of this is totally wasted. And even if you were to change the orientation to a vertical orientation, what happens is that the images turns out to be out of ratio. So I hope you can see that. So again, if I were to show you the camera interface, so if you were to launch the camera with the keyboard closed in, this is how it looks like in the portrait mode or in the landscape mode. So this is how it is. But once you launch the keyboard underneath, and then you get into this narrowed down display, and you can see now the display has some amount of issues. So half of it is sort of darken out compared to the other. So these are all the software issues plaguing this device. Now if I were to make it into a vertical orientation, it doesn't change into a bigger display. Instead what it does is the images are stretched out of proportion now. So it looks like I've got a very long fingers. So you can see the differences here, and here you can see the change in the ratio. So image gets stretched out of proportion, so it doesn't really give you a good experience when it comes to the camera, especially if you want to shoot in the landscape mode. So these are a couple of issues with the Pro 1X at this point of time. Now all this points towards a software which is not optimized at all for the device. I am not sure when we would be receiving the update for this device at this point of time. There goes the front facing camera. Now I'm just going to exit out, so you can see the amount of struggle that I have. I can't even go back with this device. So these are the issues plaguing this device at this point of time. So like I said, the software is not finished, so I'm going to return it using the function button here. Now another weird issue that I have with this device has to do with the YouTube playback. So when it goes to the YouTube playback, you can see that even the Wi-Fi strength is not good. Now let's go to this. All of us are fans of Family Guy. Now you can see this video how it is sort of playing fine. Now what happens when I connect it to a Bluetooth earbud? So I'm going to activate this Bluetooth, and I'm going to take out my trusted Nokia P3600 earbud. I'm going to show you that it's connected. Now it is connected to Nokia P3600. You can see it right here. But what happens to the playback? You can see how the playback is now stuttering. If you don't believe me, go back again to the video. There you go. You can see now the playback is affected. So you got a choppy video every time you connect to a Bluetooth earbud. These are a couple of things that really make the experience on the Pro 1X really not satisfying at all. Now I'm just going to show you this. So this is connected to a 5G Wi-Fi, and I'm going to connect the same thing to my trusted Nokia XR20 just to show you how poor the Wi-Fi is. So there we go. So I've noticed, like I showed you earlier, intermittent Wi-Fi gets disconnected, and probably the speed is not that good. So we're going to run this test one by one. We're going to run a speed test. So I've showed you earlier on the phone. Again, this is my XR20. There we go. Next, continue. Only this time, allow. All these are too many. Okay, waste of time. Okay, there we go. So this is the Wi-Fi speed test. Now I'm running on a 500 megabits per second speed network, and you can see how the download speed is below 10 megabits per second, which is really shocking. That was the download speed at 9.55 megabits per second. Upload speed is equally miserable at half of that speed. So again, like I said, this is a 500 megabits per second network, and this is what I get here. Now on the XR20, I'm going to run it here. Again, they are connected to the same network, and you can see the amount of differences on both these devices. The Nokia XR20 is going at 280 megabits per second for the download. Upload is north of 100 megabits per second. A stark differences that you can see between both these devices. Now, let's talk a bit about the controversies of the function Tec Pro. Now, I've shown you multiple issues with this device when it comes to the software. Some hardware are not as advertised. Now, this device was actually in the crowdfunding project in Indiegogo in 2020, December 2020. After 2 years of delay, it's finally coming to the backers, probably a couple of months back. Like many other crowdfunded projects, there are delays and there are some changes in the hardware offering. Now, the Function Tec Pro 1X was supposed to be a one-of-a-kind device for people yearning to use a QWERTY keyboard with the ability to install or run different operating system. Now, this device was sold at a price of north of 300 USD, north of 600 USD, and it goes up to 800 USD for the premium ones. Now, of course, the device have gone into some changes. We don't have the initial premium hardware offering. What we have is a rather basic mid-range software experience. Now, this device can be bought at a retail price of about 330 US dollar. Okay, so about 300, around 300 to 330 US dollar, you can actually purchase this device. 8 GB of RAM, 256 GB of storage, running Snapdragon 665. I can still accept it. Now, unfortunately, the software experience is nowhere near acceptable to be used as your primary driver, especially if you want to use this as a device for your work, especially looking at how the original E-series was intended to be used as a business class device. This is nowhere there at all. Now, we do note how the Symbian was a bit slow. The Symbian had not many of apps, but with the Function Tec Pro 1X, I'm discovering new issues every day. Some are software, some probably related to hardware, and things like the basic things like the fingerprint experience, like you can see here now, it started to creep in, not recognized at all, not recognized, too many attempts. So the year is 2023. Things like Wi-Fi speed, things like fingerprint scanner, things like night mode or a better camera experience should be out of the box. It should not be a question anymore. Unfortunately, with the Function Pro 1X, I would recommend for people planning to invest on one, probably to stay away until they could probably have a better software update to rectify some of the issues that I've highlighted here. Now, this is really a beautiful device. The hardware is good, the keyboard is fantastic. With the hardware offered for the price of about 330, this is actually a bargain, provided every part of the device works as intended. Otherwise, the experience would really be very frustrating. Now, having said that, I do believe that companies like this would honor their promise by giving a proper update to rectify some of the issues that can be rectified. A lot of it has to do with the software optimization, which is something that they could actually do something about it. For now, there are better phones at this price range. Even at a bargain price of 330, you can get better phones with a better experience. One such phone is the Nokia G60. It has a more potent hardware. The price is in fact cheaper than the Function Pro Tec 1X. So you can get the G60 at a cheaper price with a much more powerful hardware, much more optimized software, and you won't be regretting on that. Till then, I do hope the company take note of this video and do something about the experience, so that buyers would, the early backers at least, would be happy to use one. For now, that's all from me. This is my early review of the Pro 1X. I do hope you enjoyed this video. For backers or others who have had this device, do comment in the comment section if you have noted other issues with the device, or you have other variants of this device, because the hardware of this device doesn't match with what is being promoted in their website. So I hope all of you take care. This video is not to belittle any company. It takes a lot of effort to create a good device. Like I said before, I believe that they can rectify this provided they concentrate their effort on optimizing the experience now. So with that said, do take care. Hope to see you in the next